Fell into a really bad drug addiction.
What drugs were you using?
It started off with smoking weed, and then the next thing I did was cocaine, ecstasy, and before you know it, I was doing Xanax and heroin every day. These two huge dudes come in, and they come to escort me to this wilderness program. It was very intense, 9 weeks, no tent, water out of a creek. It was one of the best experiences of my life. And fast forward, I was not ready to change. Within a matter of a year, I got arrested 5 times. So when I came across your interview and I watched it with Ed, I just all of a sudden felt like I knew all this stuff and it just had to come to the surface and make me realize it. I knew what to do. You have the ability to change your situation. You are not fixed to this situation that you are in.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Passionate Few podcast. It's your host, Omar here, and today you're gonna hear an incredible story as we sit down with none other than Josh Jacobs. And in this interview, you're gonna learn about not only how Josh went from zero to building a $130,000 a month business, but more importantly, how he was able to drop 100 pounds, overcome drug addiction, and go from nearly a serious jail sentence to turning his life around completely. So pay attention because this interview will absolutely blow you away and show you that you too can change your life with one simple decision to make it happen. So with no further ado, thanks so much for being on the show today, Josh.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir, man. Super awesome to be doing this interview here, post interviewing Tim Grover. We're here in Chicago at Trump Tower, this incredible view.
That was epic.
Yes, and we're gonna follow up that video by really delving deep into your story. So for people who might not know what you do, who you are yet, can you share a little bit about, the rough situation you were in, just so the audience has context, and then we'll get into a little bit about how you turned it around.
Absolutely. So I grew up in a suburb about 45 minutes north of Chicago named Vernon Hills, and middle class area, nice area, one of the best high schools in the country. Mm-hmm. And I had a great upbringing. I would say like the biggest adversity I went through when I was super young was like, I don't know, my parents fighting or something. Mm-hmm. I always had food on the table, like nothing like that. And later on, when I was about to go into high school, mm-hmm. Summer after 8th grade, I joined like a summer school going into high school and made friends with different groups of friends and started experimenting with different things, started using drugs, and basically fell into a really bad drug addiction when I was 14 or 15 years old. Mm-hmm.
What drugs were you using, if you don't mind me asking?
It started off with, I remember the first time I smoked weed. Uh-huh. And then I started drinking when I was younger, like just a little bit here and there.
And it was just friends saying like, hey, hit this or what?
Yeah, I was heavily influenced by music, okay? So like I grew up listening to a lot of Eminem and rap music, and specifically Eminem, always rapping about drugs. And I know it sounds funny, but I was influenced by that music, and I like looked forward to smoking weed when I was younger, and looked forward to doing ecstasy and things like that. So it started off with smoking weed, and then quickly the next thing I did was cocaine, and the next thing was ecstasy, and before you know it, I was doing Xanax and heroin every day, and in a full-blown addiction, and it was bad.
And how old were you at that time, in the peak of that?
The peak of that was probably between ages 15 and 17 for those 2 years. When I turned 15, that's when my addiction got really bad. Mm-hmm. And my parents sent me to a 30-day rehab center. Mm-hmm. And in that rehab, I knew that I wasn't gonna quit doing drugs. I mean, I knew exactly where all my stuff was at home and hidden. And as soon as I got out, I went straight back and got high that exact same day. And then that turned into another rehab, which I actually ran away from. Mm-hmm. And then I stopped going to school completely because the thing about Xanax is it makes you not care about anything. And that was great for a teenager who has, a bunch of anxiety and depression and just didn't want to care about anything. Mm-hmm. But the other problem with that is it makes you, again, not care about anything, your future. So when I completely stopped going to school, I wasn't thinking about my future or anything like that. I was just thinking, to be honest, I don't care if I live or die. And this was at 15 or 16 years old. And I know a lot of teenagers go through, different things. But mm-hmm. I was feeling like just didn't care about anything. Stopped going to school. And after about 3 weeks, my parents decided to send me to a wilderness camp. So about 4:30 in the morning, I'm downstairs smoking, drinking, snorting, whatever, doing stuff with my friends.
4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I get two huge dudes that I hear walking upstairs, and I'm like, this doesn't sound right. My mom's not up at 4:30 in the morning. My dad had moved out at that point, so I knew he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I go upstairs, and my dad is there, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's something going on here. It's 4:30 in the morning. My dad hasn't been here in a year or whatever. There's something going on. And then all of a sudden, these two huge dudes come in, and they come to escort me to this wilderness program. I remember I was such a piece of shit. I went downstairs, took all the rest of the Xanax I had, pounded the rest of the bottle of Jack Daniels, lit a cigarette, and blew the smoke in my dad's face and said, fuck you. I was so mad. I will never forget that. And he will never forget that. And then I got taken to Georgia on an airplane.
How old were you at this time?
I was 16.
Damn.
I was
Okay.
16. It was like
So
6 months after the last rehab.
So they did this to try to get you off. So they knew what was going on, your parents, yeah.
They knew what was going on. They had heard about the wilderness stuff from a different family member or friend and sent me there. And basically what the wilderness is it's like a way to put you in a completely different environment that you've never been in before and make you do a bunch of hard stuff. And I actually, looking back at it, it was one of the best experiences of my life. There's a lot of different stories surrounding wilderness. A lot of them have shut down. It was very intense. 9 weeks, no tent, you have to pump water out of a creek. All you have is an 8-foot by 6-foot tarp to put over you. If you can't make fire bow drilling, like with no lighter, you have to eat your beans and rice dehydrated with cold water instead of warm water. It was very intense for a 15, 16, 17-year-old, but it was one of the best experiences of my life. It was when I learned a lot about myself. I started doing all those hard things. And even though I wasn't ready to change at the moment, I still take a lot of those lessons with me to this day. Fast forward, part of the wilderness when you end is going to a boarding school. And we had a layover in Chicago on the way to my boarding school in Utah. So as soon as we land in Chicago, I said peace to the parents and went back to my house instead of getting on the next leg of the flight to Utah. And again, I was home for a weekend. It's the day I got home, I had my friends come over, we got drunk, we smoked weed. I was not ready to change. Again, decided I agreed to go to boarding school. It was in Utah. Part of it was that I got to snowboard. So this was a very bougie boarding school. Like I agreed to go for that reason. And basically after 2.5 months of being there, just hated it. And my parents came for Parents Weekend. They were in the brunt of their divorce at that moment. And I basically manipulated my mom into taking me out. Brought me home and started getting arrested after that. And that is when I really had to take a different look at my life, because within a matter of, I don't know, a year, I got arrested 5 times.
Wow.
And then
What were the offenses?
first one was having a fake ID. Second one was I think battery, getting in a fight with friends, stupid teenager stuff. Third one was getting caught with selling a 1/4 pound of weed to an undercover cop. I got set up by somebody that I knew my whole entire life. And then I got out on retrial, and while I was waiting to see the court for my case, I got arrested again for selling Xanax on a school ground. And that was the one that was really bad. It was the selling the weed to the undercover cop was bad because this was 10, 15, 16 years ago. I don't even know. That was when weed was highly illegal here.
Yeah.
And that was 2 felonies. And then I got the 2 felonies for the Xanax on the school ground. And that is when I went to jail. I was 17, went to adult county jail. And yeah, I basically had a choice at that moment. Do I want to continue? And I was facing 6 to 15 years in prison as a 17-year-old. Everybody around me is older than me. Everybody around me is a degenerate criminal. I had to decide, do I want to spend the rest of my life with these people and in jail? Or do I want to clean up my acts? Something that Tim was saying in the last interview, he's like, I don't tell you what to do, you know what to do. I knew what to do. Even though I was only 17 years old, I knew that the answer is stop committing crime, stop doing drugs, stop selling drugs, get sober. It was just a matter of wanting to do that. I'd been to rehab 5 times. I knew what to do. I just never wanted to do it until that moment. When I was facing time in prison, that was the moment where I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to change my life. I want to do something positive. And that's when things started to change for me.
Dude, that's wild. Now, at this time, like what was it rooted in? Was it rooted in wanting to be, like you said, a degenerate? Was it rooted in maybe the pain of the divorce of your parents fighting? Or would that have just been an excuse? You were just trying to have fun? Like if you could go back, what was really driving it? If you could self-diagnose, so to speak.
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think that the majority of it was probably just me being self-conscious. What's the word I'm looking for?
Insecure.
Insecure.
Yeah.
I was overweight my entire life. I was very fat. Like I was not just overweight, I was obese. And you know, I always played into that identity of being like the fat guy. And it worked for me, but I think deep down I was insecure. And it definitely got worse, like when my parents got divorced. I don't think that was the reason because I was already doing stuff before then, but that was when I was 15 years old. I was already experimenting with drugs. I was already insecure. I already had all these other feelings. And that kind of just poured a little bit of gasoline on the fire. And I started to get much worse after then. But I think it was just rooted mainly in insecurity, wanting to, you know, fit in with everybody and be cool or whatever. So
yeah, no, dude, I appreciate you sharing that. It's very vulnerable of you. Now, if you could look back to that younger person of Josh, do you think you had to be faced with that consequence to change, right? Because there's a concept that says people change. Tony Robbins talks about this, that there's 2 things that make people change. One is inspiration and 2 is desperation. And it seems at that point it was probably desperation because you realized, hey, you know, if I keep going the way I'm going, it's not looking very good, right? The future's not looking too bright. So do you think you needed a consequence that radical at that time to make the shift? Or what do you think it finally took where you said, holy shit, this needs to stop now?
So interesting. There have been times in my life where, in my later life, in my adult life that we'll talk about later, that I have changed because of inspiration. But I definitely needed that desperation at that point because I had been inspired through all the other rehabs I had gone to and things like that. But that was just like in recovery, they talk about hitting a rock bottom. That was my rock bottom. That was when I was desperate to do something different. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I was desperate to not be in the place that I was in. I was desperate to get out of jail is what I was desperate to do. Yeah. And I would have done anything to do it. So yeah, I do think that was necessary for me. And you know, people say, do you regret anything in your life? And I don't regret anything. And I don't regret any of the things that I did. I think that experience taught me so much that I still use to this day in my life. So no, I think it was definitely from desperation.
That's crazy. And then transitioning to, you know, things later, how does that end up leading to you later dropping 100 pounds, which I'm sure there's a gap of time between then. But take me back to, you know, once you realize, okay, I need to make a shift, does that start translating to other areas of your life? Does it take a lot of time for that to happen? You know, you're 17, 18 years old. What happens when you get out of serving time?
Yeah, so I was in jail and I was only in the county jail, like waiting for my case to be heard. And I was there for 44 days. And then
probably the longest 44 days of your life.
Oh yeah, it was really long. Yeah. And then I got them to agree to transfer me to a rehab. Basically, I told them, look, I am a drug addict. The reason I have these felonies right now are because I'm a drug addict. And I'm very privileged to have been able to go to a rehab instead of continue my time in jail. And I went to that rehab. I was there for 9 months. So in total, I was gone for like 10 and a half months. This is when I was 17. So I was gone my entire senior year of high school. I never even graduated high school. I had to get my GED while I was in rehab. And basically, I had a lot of time to think in those 10 and a half months. And I just decided I have all of this. A lot of recovery is personal development and things like that. And I realized I have all this energy and this ability that I was putting into negativity. And what could I do in the world if I put it into positivity? So I just decided when I got out, I was going to take my life seriously. I was going to go to school. I had gotten my GED. I was going to go to a community college and just figure out, how to start a business or something. I've always been entrepreneurial since I was a very young kid. The cliche stuff, shoveling snow, that type of stuff. So I started my eBay business when I was 13 years old.
I did too. Funny you say that. Yeah. I used to go to the swap meet and buy a bulk of like 200 shirts, and I would buy them for like $5 each, and then I would wholesale them online like in batches of 50 for like a little bit of a profit. Yeah,
Nice.
I remember that. Yeah.
I was using like the first drop shipping store that ever existed. I forgot even what it was called at this point. And but and selling stuff for like my parents' friends and taking a commission. But yeah, so I was really entrepreneurial, and I just decided I was gonna do something positive, and went to community college, started a business, like a multi-level marketing company. Whatever you do when you're 18 years old and you don't know what to do, but you want to make money, and they sell you on the dream, But the cool thing about that is they give you a lot of personal development.
Right. Yeah.
So I continued developing like this belief and this desire to do something bigger. And I actually went on to become pretty successful in that multi-level marketing company, and basically did it all throughout college, and graduated from CLC and community college and got into a university. And so even though I got my GED, I did wind up getting my college degree.
Did you get sober during that time period?
I was sober from as soon as I got out, like as soon as I got arrested, I was sober. And I'm not sober today. Like I'll have a drink here and there, but I don't do any drugs anymore. My life is a lot different. And, I talk to people in addiction about this too, because, a lot of people say once you're an addict, you're always an addict. And this is a very controversial statement, but I don't know if I believe that. So,
because the strongest need in the human psyche is the need to remain consistent with who we believe we are.
Yeah.
So like if your identity is locked in on that, it's easy to get stuck in that identity. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's been a long time, and I, have not gone back to my old ways. So I don't know how much I believe that. I'm sure for some people maybe it's true, but decided I wanted to do something bigger, and basically just I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Yeah, the identity that you were recently talking to someone, and they were saying, once an addict, always an addict. And then you're saying you don't know if you necessarily believe that.
Yeah, so they say once an addict, always an addict. I don't know if I necessarily believe that. I was sober from the time I was 17 to the time I was 20 because I was on probation, and like I said, I was desperate. I was not going back to jail.
Right.
So I was sober from 17 to 20, maybe even into 21.
I have a quick question for you. Given that the e-commerce industry is growing by the trillions year over year, have you ever dreamed of running your own e-commerce business like many of the guests we've interviewed on the show? But maybe you felt overwhelmed about where to begin? Lucky for you, today's sponsor, Zendrop, solves this exact problem. You see, with Zendrop, you simply select high-quality products, add them to your store, and they handle shipping and fulfillment while you make the profit. No more guessing games on product sourcing or dealing with inventory hassles. Zendrop's platform is designed with you in mind, making it incredibly simple to launch and scale your dropshipping business in a one-stop shop. Plus, they're offering an exclusive deal. Sign up today through our link below, and their team will personally craft your very own store to kickstart your e-commerce journey. They even have weekly coaching calls to answer all of your questions and help you get up and running in no time. It's truly more than just a platform. It's your e-commerce partner waiting to join you on the path to success. So why wait? It only takes 5 minutes or less to sign up. Simply hit pause, head over to zendrop.com/passion, and let's turn your passion for e-commerce into a thriving online business today. Thank you to Zendrop for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the show.
How much did it scare you being in jail? Like, what are some of the things you saw in there that like...
So I got kind of lucky when I went to jail. I actually had a friend on the same, actually had two friends on the same level as me, or the same dorm or whatever they call it. I forgot. It's been so long, I forgot what they even call it. So I got kind of lucky. I was nervous when I first went in there, but ran into my buddy almost immediately, and he had been there a couple times, so he kind of showed me the ropes. And then left him, got transferred to somebody else, nervous again, and had another friend in there that kind of also showed me the ropes. So I got kind of lucky. I was also in like a nice part of Illinois. So it's not like I was here in Chicago and Cook County. Then I definitely would have been even more scared because I was 17 and I was I was the youngest person in the whole place. So for a drug offense, which I don't know, but so yeah, I was sober for that amount of time, and then I started drinking a little bit again, and but I don't overdo it, and it's not a problem in my life anymore. So
Did that translate to you wanting to get other areas of your life better? Or at what point when you get out and get, a lot more sober, do you start going, like what other areas could I play? Because you're still overweight. You still, I assume you got like a corporate job, right? Like you weren't entrepreneurial.
So I was in that MLM.
Point.
So I was in that
Yeah.
MLM. I was building a business and I was getting inspired to do something bigger. And I decided I wanted to start a business. So I got into affiliate marketing and basically started doing the exact same thing as MLM. And long story short, within a couple of years of like making it big in the MLM, I was like one of the top recruiters in the company. Like I made, hundreds of thousands of dollars through college. It was pretty unbelievable. And then, just like most MLMs do, it destroyed itself. And I was young. I was 22 or whatever. I didn't have the foresight to like go and create multiple streams of income and all this stuff. I just figured it would last forever. And deep down, I knew it wasn't going to last forever. So it all ended. And I didn't know what I was gonna do. I had just bought a condo. I had increased all of my monthly expenses. I had just graduated school and my monthly income went from, 12 grand a month or whatever down to almost zero. And I had no clue what to do, but I had a mortgage now. I had all this stuff. So I decided to go get a job. It was my first job I ever got. I was like 24 or something like that. It was the first corporate job I got. And worked that corporate job and hated it. I absolutely hated it. I always identified as an entrepreneur, and all of a sudden I'm working in this job and I'm like, I'm not an entrepreneur anymore. What am I doing with my life? So that is when I kind of hit the second low. Like the first low was, obviously being in addiction and going to jail and all those things. Second low was when I had made all this money, lost all the money, had to go and get a job, something I thought I was never gonna have to do for the rest of my life. And again, I'm very blessed to have been able to get a good job, but I hated it. So that was the next low point for me. And when I decided, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'd been working there for 2 years and I just couldn't take it anymore. I was actually at another point of desperation. You talk about the change coming from either inspiration or desperation. I was definitely desperate. I felt like I needed to do something different. So I just started basically learning more about, I would say diving more into personal development. I came across your interview. This is crazy that we're having this interview right now because I came across your interview with Ed Milet. And I'd never watched a podcast. I'd never listened to a podcast. I never liked personal development. Even when I was in the MLM and everybody would talk about personal development, it was always something that I was not big on. Like I was big on making money. I wasn't big on the personal development side. So when I came across your interview and I watched it with Ed, I just all of a sudden felt like I knew all this stuff and it just had to come to the surface and make me realize it. And as soon as I had that realization, I decided I was gonna change my life. I know it sounds crazy, but I just dove all into personal development, and basically from that day forward, every single day I listen to a podcast, every single day I read, every single day I focus on personal development. Wow. And I started doing it at that point, and that is when my life started changing. I started exercising to get healthy. I was 100 pounds overweight. I was 320 pounds. I started working towards building back up a business. So that was really the moment when I decided I needed to do my next, revolution.
Wow, dude, that's awesome. That touches me, bro. That's freaking cool.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, bro. That's awesome. That means a lot to me. And then, so when you go back to that moment where you realize, I need to do something different, did you quit your job right away? Or what was the process from walking away to starting your own thing?
So the process was, I knew that I couldn't quit my job right away because I
needed the cash.
Yeah, I needed the cash, I needed bills. But, I had learned enough from diving into so much personal development, I need to just take the next 6 months and laser focus. And I texted my family, I texted all my friends, I'm like, listen, for the next 6 months, you're not gonna see much of me because I'm on a mission. I think that was literally the text word for word. Yeah. And sure enough, 2 months into that, COVID happens. And there's really nothing to do anyway at that point. So I got kind of lucky. I was I leaned into it, and I just started spending every waking minute outside of my job on my business or my health. It was simultaneous. I was all in. I was all in on becoming a better version of myself, financially, physically, mentally, everything. So it all started at the same time. the growing the business, the losing the 100 pounds, all of that started right after the interview and like right after seeing that and starting to dive into personal development.
I love that, bro. And then you go from being 300, you said 320 pounds?
Yeah.
To committing to, was it the goal to drop weight? I know you did 75 Hard, which is Andy Frisella's workout program, but what was the inspiration for the health side of it? And what was your plan of attack for someone out there that might want to lose 10, 20, 50, 100 pounds plus themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. The inspiration of it was it was again, desperation. Like this one was more of a mix of desperation and inspiration because I could have kept living as a fat person and like I could have kept living like 100 pounds overweight and it would have been more difficult, but I could have done it. It was more so that I would bend over to tie my shoes. I was 26 years old. I could barely bend over to tie my shoes. Like that's not fun. It wasn't fun taking off my shirt places. Like I was the same insecure, person then as I was as a teenager, and I didn't want to feel that way anymore. But now I realized that I had this control over how I looked and how I felt. So I made a goal this was even before 75 Hard, to just do 5 minutes a day on I bought a Stairmaster / elliptical type thing for my house because I'm like, there's no excuses. If it's in my house, there's no excuses. And I made a goal to do 5 minutes a day because I learned from reading Atomic Habits that I just needed to form a habit. And that is exactly what I did. I formed that habit. Some days I went only 5 minutes. Some days I went 45 minutes. But every single day I did 5 minutes, and that formed the habit for me that I still stick to this day. So I would say that and then I went on and did 75 Hard, and that completely changed my life. But I would say that if you are looking to lose weight, start with something very small, like a 5 minute a day habit, just so that you could build the habit. And that way, you're not going to rely on your motivation because, as we just heard about in the last interview, motivation comes and goes. But discipline and the habits are going to stay and get you there no matter what, every single day. So I developed that 5 minute a day habit. And honestly, I tell everybody that. Like, even my wife the other day, we were on a walking our dog, and she missed her workout in the morning. And she's like, I'm just going to wait until tomorrow. And I'm like, just do 5 minutes. Like, just do 5 minutes. And she wound up doing like a 45-minute killer workout after just committing to do 5 minutes. So I would say that is probably my best piece of it. Just the simplest thing you could possibly do is just commit to something small that you are going to do every single day so that you build the habit and you start building credibility with yourself more than anything. Because every single day when you go and do that 5 minutes, it's a win. And even though it was only 5 minutes, it's a win. And if you get 5 of those on top of each other, 10 of those on top of each other, 30 days of wins, you feel like a different person when you're very used to losing. I told myself for 15 years, I'm going to lose weight. Every New Year's resolution, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to lose weight. I was very used to losing that battle. So it felt good to start winning that battle, even though it was only 5 minutes.
I love that. So it's about controlling daily habits on a micro level and then letting it sort of scale up as you go. It's controllable that way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like Tim Grover was talking about, he says, you control the controllables, and when you do that, the uncontrollables become a little more controllable. And
Absolutely.
So it grows your uncontrollable. That's cool. Now, talk to me about some of the struggles with dropping that 100 pounds, because I'm sure it wasn't easy. What are some of the lifestyle or mindset shifts that you made? I want to zoom in there one more time, because I'm sure there's a lot of people around the world who struggle with that. And then right after that is, how do you feel having dropped 100 pounds energetically in your mind and your body compared to you 100 pounds ago?
I'll start with that. I feel way better. Like, I just am way more mobile. I move around more. We were just talking about this before. I just feel lighter moving around. And I never ran when you're in high school and they have you like run the mile.
Yeah.
I always walked the mile. I was the last person to finish the mile every time. And now I could now I ran a marathon with the Iron Cowboy. That was wild. So that feels amazing to be able to do stuff like that. But it's really hard, just like anything, it's really hard. And I think the biggest thing for me that I zoned in on was learning to love doing hard things. And I read Tim Grover's Relentless. I read Can't Hurt Me. I read Atomic Habits. I've read all these books that have kind of helped me develop the mindset of leaning into doing hard things. And so there's a lot of tough moments, but what it comes down to is, Tim has this quote, crave the end result so bad that the work becomes irrelevant. And I thought about that quote, and I still do to this day, every single day, because the hard work is always going to exist. But if you crave the result so bad then you're willing to go through that hard work. Like the satisfaction that comes from a long-term goal being met versus instant gratification, the satisfaction from the long-term goal is so much better. So that's another thing that I learned. It's like, okay, the satisfaction of losing 20 pounds or 10 pounds was so much better than the satisfaction of eating the French fries or eating the cake. So I would say that if you are a person that struggles with your weight and you give in to that instant gratification all the time, because as a former over 300 pound person, I know about giving into instant gratification every hour of the day. If you find yourself doing that, just think about that feeling you get from eating that brownie or that French fry and multiply it by 1,000, because that's how you'll feel when you lose the 20 pounds. So, yeah.
And it starts with day one.
It starts with day one. It starts with 5 minutes a day. It doesn't even start with day one. It starts with 5 minutes, you know?
Profound. And then how does that later translate into the business? Because it seems like kind of like early on you were stacking losses, and then you switched from stacking losses to sort of stacking wins, right? So you went from, the drugs, jail time, weight gain, depression, anxieties, insecurities, to little by little sort of earning your way out of that. Like you said, winning the integrity with yourself. Now you're starting to get, a little cleaner mentally, a little cleaner in your energy, you're eating better, you're working out. How does that then later translate to the business and growing it now to where it's, a 6 figures plus a month business?
So I took the same exact mentality with the business that I did with my weight loss. I basically said, I'm gonna do X amount every single day, no matter what. And I'm gonna build these wins with myself every single day. And I'm gonna stack the wins, and I'm gonna build momentum. And I gave myself those 6 months, as I mentioned, to build an income big enough that I could quit my job, essentially was my goal. And
did you have a lot of failures trying different stuff?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was more so like, false start. Like Ed Milet talks about false starts. It was like false starts. Like I would make a little bit of money doing something, I get a little bit of traction, and then I would just fall completely off. And same thing. But I just committed to doing it every single day and building momentum, because I do believe in momentum. Like momentum's real. When the wave comes, ride it. And I took me about 4 months. I built up I was making like $6,000 a month from the business, which was about enough for me to quit my job and like do nothing in my life and be totally fine. But I didn't care. I was ready to quit my job, and I didn't need to, go on vacations or eat out or do anything. I just wanted to quit my job. I just wanted freedom. So I quit my job, and after 4 months, and I met up with one of my friends who I had worked with in that MLM company, 10 years prior at one of the conferences. I had started an affiliate marketing business, a lead generation business, basically, where I was generating leads for college universities.
Hey guys, quick question. Have you been enjoying this video, but you're thinking to yourself, man, I love this content, but I want to learn how to grow my brand or my business? Well, if your answer is yes, you're not alone. In fact, millions of entrepreneurs deal with this exact same issue. And it's something that I've learned the answer to from interviewing 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs around the world. And this philosophy that solves all that is a concept called who, not how. Now, the who, not how philosophy states that anytime you're stuck on the hows to get to the next level in your life, your brand, or your business, that there's always a who to help you get there. And it's for this exact reason that I'm super excited to announce that I've officially launched our brand new Passionate Few community to help you do exactly that. And yes, it's 100% free. Join me and the thousands of other entrepreneurs that can help you make your life, your business, and your dreams a reality. With no further ado, let's get back to the video.
How did you stumble on that niche real quick?
After the MLM, before I got my job, I had dabbled in that world a little bit with my now business partner. It was just kind of the natural progression of leaving MLM and doing something else, still in the affiliate world, but like more legitimate. I don't know how to say that. I mean, I don't want to call MLMs non-legitimate, but just
I get you.
Yeah, so I went back into that business because I was already familiar with it. I already knew how to market. I already knew the business, and he was willing to help me. He had a network that I could run through and everything like that. So started running through his network, ran into him at a conference in Vegas, and gave him one of my virtual assistants that I had kept on for a long time because he was just great, and gave him access to the virtual assistant who helped his business a lot. After a few months, he hit me up because he saw I was running all my volume through his network. He saw everything I was doing. Our virtual assistant worked for me and him now. And he basically said, look, I need somebody to help me grow my network and the company. And he basically said I replicated myself, is what he said. And, he replicated himself. So he offered to essentially bring me on as a partner in the business, acquire the little business that I had built. And if I hit certain numbers, after the first year or whatever, then we become 50-50 partners. And that happened, and we started building that business. I think we partnered up in 2020. This was during the COVID year. And that business today is, a 7-figure business, and it's awesome, and I love it.
Dude, that's incredible. Now, a question I have is, looking back, what would that younger version of Josh, who was looking for answers, who was stuck, trying to figure out how to, be in shape, how to make his life work, how to make money, all that, being on this side of the fence and still, growing and looking for, the stuff you want to do still, like, what is this Josh today? What would he advise the younger version of you that was looking for answers and maybe stuck and kind of up to no good, trying to figure it out, false starting and stopping and that kind of a thing? What advice would you have for that younger version of you who was looking for answers?
I think the answer that really helped me do all of the stuff that we've talked about, that I wish I would have come to the realization earlier, is the answer that I got when I was watching that interview, is like, I am in control of all this stuff. I just kind of had this, I fell into this fixed mindset. I grew up as a kid with a growth mindset, like, shoveling snow and starting an eBay business and doing all these things. I always felt like I could do anything. But then I got into addiction, and I got into, I graduated college, and I just feel like sometimes when we get older and when we go to college and we maybe gravitate more towards a fixed mindset,
right?
And stop learning at that point. Like, I feel like a lot of people, the last time they ever learn anything is in college, and then they just go into their corporate life, and that's
cruise
it.
Control,
but which is kind of what happened to me. I just kind of went into cruise control, and I fell back into this fixed mindset. And the answer that I would have told myself earlier, if I could have, is just, you are in control. You have the ability to change your situation. You are not fixed to this situation that you are in. And that is something I would have told myself when I was, 22 or whatever, and I was on that downfall, losing everything, is, you can turn this around. You don't have to go get a job. You just have to put in the work and stay committed to, whatever it is you do. But I almost kind of gave up, and I was like, I fell back in that fixed mindset of, I am who I am what I am, this is who I am. I can't learn anything else or whatever. Obviously that was wrong.
Yeah. And then one thing I want to bring up, and I'm curious the role it had in your life, if any, is, obviously you had a lot of chaos going on, and now you've built it to a much more stable place. But a fixture is your relationship, right? So I believe your now wife, who was, been your girlfriend the last couple of years, and that escalated. But talk to me about, the role that has played in your life. How did you meet her, and how did she sort of navigate being with you in the relationship? Because I'm sure coming from that background, there's a lot of baggage that you bring. Not in a negative way.
That's a great question. Yeah, no, I definitely did. Yeah,
but I'm curious. Yeah, what was that process like? What did you learn from it, and what role has she played in your life?
A huge role. I started dating my wife Greta when I had we met in high school.
Really?
We didn't date in high school.
Wow. Yeah.
And we started dating right after I got out of rehab, like when I was 18, and everybody, my whole graduating class has graduated, and I had just gotten out of rehab with my GED, and I can't believe that she wanted to talk to me, but I honestly can't believe it. But but she did, and I'm really lucky that happened, because what it did is I don't know what would have happened if I got out of rehab and started hanging out with the exact same friend group that I was hanging out with. Because, at the end of the day, I mean, if all of your friends are sitting around doing drugs every weekend or every day, and you're hanging out with them every weekend, every day, you're going to start doing drugs eventually too. Right. Even if you want to be sober, if you're around it all day, every day, eventually you'll give in.
Yeah, environment trumps willpower, yeah.
For sure. So we started dating, and I started spending a lot more time with her. And I wanted to spend more time with her because I didn't want to spend my time doing that stuff. And that was definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, and helped me stay out of trouble and helped me on this path to becoming this new person. Like, she was all supportive of the new me, or whatever you want to say. She is a very ambitious, hardworking person. So I kind of fed off of her energy. Like she graduated with, again, I don't know why she wanted to talk to me. She graduated with honors. Like she was, you know, she's a doctor now. She's an eye doctor. So I fed off of her ambition, and that also helped me, you know, develop this mindset of like, develop the desire of more and making more of an impact and doing more. So even to this day, I think we feed off of each other. And I like to think that now that I'm a more elevated version of myself, I try to I try to feed her the same way that she's fed me for so many years. So it's a huge part of my life. I think that I'm glad you brought it up because I don't know where I would be without her. I really don't.
What's been the biggest challenge navigating the relationship, given all that baggage, if any?
I would say, you know, I don't know. That's a good question. It's a good question. I don't think that,
she made
to be honest, I think it's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know how much, maybe I brought baggage, but at the end of the day, I think it's helped me a lot because I think it's all those experiences that I went through helped me. When you're in jail, you're dealing with the craziest conflict. Like people are just irrational.
Right.
People argue and fight over nothing. I don't even know. I couldn't even give you an example because it's so stupid what people argue and fight over. It's like if somebody looks at you the wrong way, you know?
Yeah.
So by being able to manage so much conflict, I feel like it's helped me a lot in my relationship, be able to manage any type of conflict we get into. Like when we were younger and in our early 20s and I was making that money, we were going to Vegas all the time and getting bottle service and drinking, like we would argue more because that's what happens when you're drinking. But but outside of that, like I feel like and whenever we have a conflict, we have pretty good communication about it. So I think all of that actually helped me. Being in those juvenile rehabilitation centers, being in jail, being in all these environments where just people fight over the stupidest stuff, helped me just not want to fight ever. And so I don't know how much, maybe there's been baggage, but instead I gave you an example of how it helped me.
No, I love that. And I think it speaks to like the nature of a healthy relationship in that it felt kind of easy, right? And that, you know, there's types of relationships that, you know, the things you bring to it bring chaos and like disorder. There's another world where that, you know, what would bring one person chaos and disorder in the right relationship would be healthy, and it'll bring wisdom and it'll bring understanding and patience and that kind of a thing. So I think it really speaks to that. It's pretty awesome. Now, how long have you guys been together? You said since you guys were late teenagers?
Yeah, 18. Yeah, so next month will be like 13 years. And we got married in November of 2020.
Wow.
We had a big wedding planned. We were gonna do a destination wedding in Miami, 200 people. And the day before we sent invites, they closed down everything because of COVID.
Yeah.
So we canceled the wedding and me and her flew down to Miami by ourselves and got eloped. It was great. It was awesome.
That's awesome. Now, what advice do you have for people when it comes to building a healthy relationship that have worked well for you? Because believe it or not, you're only 31 years old.
Yep.
Most people in their life, a lot of people, certainly the divorce rates that we have now, they're only increasing. A lot of people haven't experienced a decade plus of a relationship, certainly by their late 20s or early 30s, at any age. So I'm curious, what advice do you have for people out there who are either in relationships, want to be in healthy relationships, or are trying to navigate a relationship to build longevity and strengthen it to grow?
First off, I just want to premise this by saying definitely not perfect. We definitely aren't perfect.
You're human.
Yeah, we're human. I'm human for sure. I mess up all the time. But I would say that having a very clear line of communication, whether it's a very difficult conversation or it's the easiest conversation, is really important. I feel like a lot of people hold in their thoughts or their feelings and they don't necessarily talk about it with their partner when they should. If something's going on with her that maybe it's an uncomfortable conversation that she wants to have with me, she'll have it. If something's going on with me and maybe it's an uncomfortable conversation that I want to have with her, like we'll have it. And I think a big part of what's helped us so much is we moved in with each other after a year and a half, which is a reasonable amount. That's a reasonable amount of time to move in with each other. As an adult, maybe it's even a long time, but we were 19 at the time or 20 or whatever. So we were young, 20, I believe. So a huge part is that when you live together, you really have no choice but to like when you're having a conflict or something like that, you really have no choice but to figure it out. Like if you don't live together and you're arguing, I only know this because I see this with a bunch of people, right? If you're arguing, it's like the other one person could just leave wherever you're at. But when you live together, you're almost in this situation where you have to talk it out. And I feel like because we did that at such a young age, it really helped us. So I would say that even if you don't live together, just adopt that mindset of like, don't leave anything unresolved. Even if you guys are even if you're having a horrible fight or whatever, instead of just storming off and leaving, end the conversation with some sort of clear communication of, I'm too heated to talk about this right now. I want to go and come back when I'm more clear and talk again. Instead of just storming off, I guess would be my way of saying that. But like, yeah, I think that was a huge thing. We were forced kind of to figure it out. And since we did that at a young age, now we're kind of good at figuring it out just, on our own.
Yeah, it built peace in the chaos. Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, as you look at the landscape of things you want to do next, you've overcame drug addiction, dropped 100 pounds, built a 7-figure business. What's next on the horizon for you?
So I'm going to continue to build my business. I have very big plans. Me and my business partner have a lot that we want to accomplish. Shout out, Sean. But I also started a podcast named Mindset Mogul. And I love this type of stuff. Like I just love, clearly, probably from talking to me, you can tell that the personal development side has had a major impact on my life, and like watching your interview and with Ed and just diving into all that stuff, reading a ton of books has completely changed my life. So I love talking about this stuff. And I have a childhood friend that I grew up a few houses down from who also loves talking about this stuff. And we just decided to talk about this stuff together. So we started a podcast. I really want to grow that as well. I think that any time that you can find something that you enjoy doing, there's this. I just read this book called Ikigai. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, but it's like a Japanese proverb, and they basically say that when you find your Ikigai, you find something that one, like the world needs, 2, you enjoy doing it, 3, you can make a living doing it, and 4, I forgot the 4th one, but there's like an intersection of these 4 things.
And what's the book called for people watching?
It's called Ikigai. It's also just so there's a book called Ikigai, but there's a saying in Japanese culture, I guess, of Ikigai just means that it's that center point of all of those different things. And I just feel like when I am on the pod with my buddy Brad, shout out Brad, I'm in the flow state. I'm flowing, I'm complete. I don't have to force anything. I really enjoy it. And I would love to grow that side of, grow the podcast, eventually turn it into a business. It's not like I'm selling anything. I just love doing it. Me and Brad had a conversation before we started the podcast, and we're like, could we do this for the next 10 years if we had no viewers? Like not a single viewer.
Right.
Because that was the angle I wanted to take with it. Like I wanted to do something, because my business is my business. Like there's always going to be things in your business that aren't the most enjoyable. But whatever I did next, I wanted to do something that I was going to enjoy every single day, no matter what, whether it brought me money or not. I think it was actually maybe a question that you said or somebody said, but like, what would you do if
life was perfect?
Yeah. So I talk to people about that all the time. If life was perfect, what would happen next? I talk to people about that all the time, because you told me that when we first met, and I wrote it down, and basically it's come true, which is crazy. But like, what was I saying?
The podcast.
Oh yeah, I wanted to do something that was going to be. If I had all the money in the world, how would I spend my time?
Right.
Is pretty much what I asked myself, and it was basically that. So. And we agreed that even if we have no viewers for 10 years, we would still love doing it. And we've done 50 episodes in the last month and a half. And we're doing 2 a day sometimes, and it's awesome. So that's what's next for me. I'm going to continue growing my business. I'm going to grow the podcast, and I have big dreams and big goals in my life. And hopefully when I talk to you in 5 years from now, I'll have realized some of those goals and be able to talk about them.
I love it. Very cool, man. And then before we wrap up, we always play a little game at the end called First Things First. Okay. So the way the game works, I know you watched us do it with Grover. Essentially, I'm going to rifle off a quick word or phrase, and then you just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind as it relates to it.
Okay.
And we'll kind of recap some of the stuff we talked about. and then maybe throw you off with some fun ones too. You ready?
Okay, yep.
The only rule is that you can't repeat yourself twice.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
All right. Number one is the biggest misconception about what it takes to make money.
The biggest misconception about what it takes to make money. That it is, you have to ask for it. Like you have to ask for it. You can't be afraid to sell. You can't be afraid to raise your prices. You can't be afraid to ask for what you want. And so many people are afraid to ask for the sale, afraid to raise their prices, afraid to ask for what they want. So just don't be afraid to ask for it or go for it.
All right, number two, the biggest limiting belief you had to overcome to drop 100 pounds.
That the whole fixed mindset that I am who I am, and this is who I'm going to be. I'm not going to change. That was just kind of a feeling I had. So that was the biggest limiting belief.
Best advice you've ever been given?
The best advice I've ever been given is probably to build the 5 minutes a day thing. Because I've used that in every area of my life. I've used that in reading, exercising, things in my relationship, things in my business, building small habits and building wins every single day.
The worst advice you've ever been given?
The worst advice I've ever been given. That the worst advice I've ever been given is that you've got time. Because sure, we've got time, but why wait?
Yeah, I love that. Best relationship advice you'd give people who want to build a healthy relationship that spans a decade plus?
Have good communication and be willing to look at another person's perspective, because there's the way that you view the situation, and then there's the way that he or she views the situation, or your partner, or whoever it is. You have to be willing to look at it from the way that you are seeing things, but you have to understand why the other person sees things those ways, and be able to have a conversation without getting heated like that. That's why, okay. I was gonna go somewhere else.
No, go ahead.
I think
because I love what you said too about not going to sleep without making peace and like having the hard talks and stuff like that.
Yeah, not going to sleep without, not leaving without. I hate going to bed if you're uneasy with something. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to do that. I want to, every night when I go to bed, like I want a good night kiss. I want, I want that.
Peace.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to go to bed mad. I don't want to leave and go on a business trip mad. I don't want to leave and go out to dinner mad. Like, I just always want there to be peace outside of when we're having if we get heated in a conversation, then we get heated in a conversation. Everybody does. But at the end of that conversation, I want to go back to
peace.
Yes.
Tie up
peace.
the loop. Yeah. Okay. I love that. Biggest advice you'd give someone who wants to overcome addiction?
Stop hanging out with people who do drugs all the time is number one, 100%. Stop hanging out with people who do drugs all the time. And also just ask yourself, what do you want out of your life? Do you want to be addicted to drugs and only be using, 10% of your potential? One of the other things that really has resonated with me is something Jesse Itzler said on a podcast. He goes, do you want to get to the end of your life and realize that you've only used 70% of your potential? And no, I don't want to go to the end of my life and realize I've only used 70% of my potential. And that was part of the reason for losing weight. But it's the same thing that you can say about addiction. With addiction, you're using way less than 70% of your potential. With addiction, you're using none of your potential. I mean, you're literally just drowning and ruining your life. So ask yourself, when you get to the end of your life, are you going to be disappointed with how much effort you put into your life? Because at the end of the day, you are in control of the decisions you make and where you take yourself. So if you're in a shitty situation, of course there's exceptions, but it's more than likely that you have yourself to blame for it. If you're in a great situation, sure, there are exceptions, but it's more than likely you have yourself to blame for putting you in that amazing situation. So just do some deep reflection on how you're going to view yourself at the end of your life, and are you happy with that or are you not? Sorry, that was way more than one word, but
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. Fears.
Fears. Spiders. I am super afraid of spiders. But for real, I actually am really afraid of spiders. But I think that, one of my biggest fears is I know my parents are super proud of me. They tell me all the time. But like, I put them through hell when I was younger. But I have all these big goals and dreams and things I want to do for them and like all this stuff. And my biggest fear is that I don't do it fast enough. Of course, there's other fears that I have, but I would say like the one that recurs to me constantly is like, I got, a limited amount of time to do all these things that I want to do for them. And my fear is that, that time will run out, so.
Your wife, Greta.
The love of my life. The person that pushes me and picks me up when I'm feeling like a piece of shit, and she'll remind me what I'm capable of and set me straight.
Advice you'd give to people who want to turn their life around, whether it's with weight, drug addiction, money, relationship, any areas of their life they're struggling with?
I would say, to be honest, I would go back to what I was saying earlier about just doing a deep reflection on what it is you want your life to be. That exercise that you had me do, write down, if life was perfect, what would happen next? Like, it really opened my eyes to, like you said, aim for the ideal. Instead of short selling myself and saying, I just want this, I just want this, I just need this and I'll be happy. Like, number one, I need to be happy now. I don't want to wait for something to be happy. And number two, aim for the ideal. And a lot of people, I feel like, are using drugs or overeating or doing all this stuff because they're not aiming for the ideal. They're just kind of, in cruise control. So I would say that, one, do some super deep reflection on how you're going to view yourself at the end of your life. Try to flash forward to the 80-year-old version of yourself and really try to imagine how you're going to feel in that moment, looking back at the part of your life that you're in right now. And I literally look at my life as a story, and I am writing that story every single day. And I feel like I'm in the very early chapter still, even though I'm 31 and I've gone through a lot in my life. I feel like I'm still only in like chapter 4, So look at your life as a story, and where are you in that story right now? And where do you want that story to end up? Do you want that story to end up with you in jail, rehab, or dead? Do you want that story to end up with you dying of a heart attack and not being able to walk your daughter down the aisle because you're fat as, 200 pounds overweight? Do you want that to end up at, doing the same exact corporate job over and over and over again that you hate? Sure, maybe you love it and that's great. But if you hate it, do you want the rest of your life to be this same thing every day? Like, think about that and write down, if life was perfect, what would happen next, and aim for the ideal instead of just, short selling yourself.
I love that. Josh, thank you so much, man. This has been
Omar.
Epic. Guys, thank you for tuning in this episode. As always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and also give Josh a follow. We'll put links in the description down below. You can also check out his podcast, Mindset Mogul.
Yes.
And we'll plug those links in the description below. Until next time, live strong, live with passion, and I hope Josh's story inspires you to take your life, your business to the next level. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.